Oyo believed the future had been secured. The queen had conceived, and weeks earlier, the palace drums had sounded in restrained celebration. The elders nodded with relief. At last, the kingdom would not be left without an heir. But the gods had not finished speaking. The labor began at night, not with joy, but with urgency. The palace corridors filled with hurried footsteps as midwives moved in and out of the birthing chamber, their faces steady and their hands practiced. Inside, Olori Adesua gripped the woven sheets as pain rose and fell like a relentless tide. In the outer chamber, just beyond the carved doorway, Kabiyesi paced. He had not left. Tradition required that he wait outside. He walked the length of the corridor, stopped, prayed under his breath, and then walked again. Inside that room, destiny was unfolding in ways even he could not see. A contraction seized the queen, hard and sharp. Then the first cry pierced the night. A boy. Relief moved through the chamber, and one midwife exhaled. But before the cloth was fully wrapped, another wave of pain followed, stronger and deeper. And then a second cry rose into the air. Silence fell, followed with shock. Twins! The first child was cleaned and turned gently. Beneath his collarbone lay a birthmark shaped like the rising sun, light. The second child was lifted next. On his shoulder rested a clear half moon, darkness. Adesua saw it. She did not gasp. She did not weep. But something settled inside her. Her mother stood near the foot of the mat, not adorned in royal beads and not seated among elders. Simply a woman present for her daughter's labor. She saw the mark too. She stepped closer and spoke low enough that only the midwives could hear. That one must not leave this room in royal cloth. It was not a command. It was fear. The midwives hesitated. Adesua lifted her head, her voice calm and controlled. No one leaves this chamber. Now it was a command. The room obeyed her. She looked directly at the midwife holding the second child. You delivered one son, she said quietly. The midwife swallowed. Yes, my queen. Outside, the drums had begun to stir faintly. Word had already spread that a prince had been born. Kabiyesi was still pacing just beyond the entrance. Through a narrow rail passage, used only by palace staff, a trusted guard was summoned. Not a man of rank, not one who questioned, one who obeyed. He entered with his head bowed and his eyes lowered. The half-moon child was placed into his arms. The instruction was brief, but he understood. End it, bury it, return before dawn. The guard slipped out through the hidden corridor moments before Kabiyesi was finally called inside. When Kabiyesi entered the birthing chamber, he saw only one child. The sun-marked boy was placed into his arms, wrapped in royal cloth. Kabiyesi exhaled for the first time that night. He did not ask if there had been more. He did not suspect absence. Outside, the drums thundered properly now. The palace gates opened. Oyo rejoiced. He did not know his joy was incomplete. The guard moved quickly through the forest, the child wrapped tightly against his chest. The night air was heavy with damp earth and crushed leaves. He had carried out difficult orders before, things that did not sit easily on his conscience. But this was different. The child stirred. A small sound escaped him. The guard slowed. He looked down. The baby blinked up at him, alive and unaware. For a long moment, the guard stood there wrestling with himself. He could not do it. Instead, he walked toward the river at the edge of the forest. The current moved swiftly under the moonlight. "If the river takes you," he muttered, "then fate has spoken." He placed the child gently upon the water, wrapped tightly enough to float. The cloth drifted. The current carried it downstream. The guard turned back toward the palace, but he never made it home. Downriver, where the forest thinned and the banks widened, near the small settlement of Akete, a childless couple returning from their farm heard a faint cry caught in the reeds. The woman stopped. "Did you hear that?" she asked. They pushed through the grass. There, tangled lightly against a fallen branch, the cloth floated. Inside it, a child, alive. The man lifted him carefully from the water. The woman stared at the mark on his shoulder. They had prayed for years. Now, a child had come to them carried by the river. They did not question it. They took him home. Weeks later, the palace courtyard in Oyo was filled with chiefs, elders, and drummers. The sun-marked prince was presented before the kingdom. He was named Adeyemi. The people cheered. Far away in Akete, the small river village that had received a child from the water, a quieter gathering took place in a modest compound. The rescued child was named Ayomide. "Joy has come to me." Two homes celebrated. Neither knew of the other. Years passed. At first, Oyo prospered. Not quietly and not modestly, but fully. The harvest was strong that season. Yams came out of the earth thick and unspoiled, their weight bending the baskets that carried them. Palm oil flowed deep, red and rich, poured carefully into clay pots lining the market stalls. The markets did not simply stay crowded, they pulsed. Traders passed through the palace gates without fear. Cloth from distant towns, dried fish from the coast, carved wood, spices, grains. Voices rose and overlapped in confident negotiation. Trade routes remained open. Taxes were steady. Barns were full. In council, elders nodded in approval, and some even allowed themselves small smiles when Kabiesi spoke. The kingdom believed its future had been secured, and in those days, it was difficult to argue otherwise. In Oyo, Prince Adeyemi grew under careful guidance. He sat beside his father during council. He learned restraint before power. He learned when to listen and when silence carried more authority than speech. Far from the palace in Akete, Ayomide grew differently. He questioned, he challenged, he listened, but he did not bow blindly. He worked the fields with strength beyond his years and understood people quickly. He carried a stubborn spark that made elders both proud and uneasy. Neither household knew of the other. Oyo remained stable until the day it did not. The harvest that season had been praised in advance. Farmers calculated profits before the first cut was made. Palm groves were heavy and yam barns were ready. Then, 3 nights before the harvest began, the fire started. Flames rose from the eastern farms first. By dawn, smoke covered half the fields. What the fire did not take, animals finished by morning. Goats broke fencing and antelope trampled seedlings. Men stood at the edge of ruined farmland in disbelief. This is sabotage. Old grudges resurfaced. Accusations spread. Market arguments turned physical. Fear spread faster than the fire. Fear of hunger and fear of loss. Fear that something had shifted beneath Oyo's feet. And then it happened. In the palace courtyard, Prince Adeyemi pressed a hand to his chest. His breathing shortened. Before the guards could reach him, he collapsed. The courtyard erupted. At that exact hour in Akite, beside the river, Ayomide dropped to the ground without warning. 2 homes, 1 hour, no visible connection. That night, the royal priest cast his cowries 3 times. Kabiyesi demanded an answer. The priest lifted his eyes. What was meant to stand together has been separated. Far away, the diviner in Akete cast his own cowries and spoke the same truth. Separated from its own blood. Kabiyesi did not sleep that night. Before first light, he summoned the royal priest again. "What do you mean?" the king demanded. "Please speak plainly." The priest studied the cowries before answering. "My king, the gods showed that something born whole was divided, not by fate, but by human hands." Kabiyesi's jaw tightened. "When?" he asked. The priest met his gaze. "At birth." Silence filled the chamber. "If this division began at birth," Kabiyesi said slowly, "then it began within these walls." The priest inclined his head. "The answer lies where the first cry was heard." Kabiyesi studied him for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "You can leave now." Only then did he send for the queen. Adesua entered composed. No elaborate beats, no ceremonial weight, just controlled dignity. Kabiyesi did not sit. "When you conceived," he began slowly, "was there anything the gods required of you that I was not told?" Her answer came without hesitation. "No." The priest says something meant to stand together was separated, that the land suffers because of it. "Well, perhaps the priest has misread the signs," she replied evenly. Kabiyesi stepped closer. "The gods do not repeat themselves without a reason," he said, "and I do not ignore them." Silence stretched. "You will come with me to the shrine," he said. "You will answer before the gods that nothing concerning the birth of our son was hidden." For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. "After all these years," she asked quietly, "and you require me to swear? You do not trust me, your wife?" "I trust the woman I married," Kabiyesi answered. "But I rule Oyo. If the gods are appointing within this house, I will not close my ears." She held his gaze. Then she nodded. "Very well. I will swear." The shrine was still when they arrived. Elders stood as witnesses. The chief priest spread the cowries before the altar. Adesua knelt. "You will swear," the priest said, "that nothing concerning the birth of your son was hidden from Oyo." She opened her mouth, but no words came. Kabiyesi's voice cut through the silence. "Speak." Adesua exhaled slowly. "There is something." The elders shifted. "When I first visited the chief priest in this shrine," she began, "I was told it was not written for me to bear a child." A murmur moved through the witnesses. My mother refused to accept it. She sought another path. We went beyond Oyo to a man in the forest who agreed to help. Kabiesi's expression hardened. When I conceived, she continued, I knew the gods had been forced. She paused. I gave birth to 2 sons. The shrine erupted in disbelief. Twins? No woman in Oyo had ever born twins. It had never been recorded. Kabiesi stared at her. That is not possible. It was not written, she answered, and yet it happened. The first bore the mark of the sun. The second bore the mark of the half moon. Kabiesi's voice lowered. And what happened to the second child? My mother arranged for him to be taken away, she said steadily. To be ended. And you allowed it? Yes. Why? Adesua did not tremble. 2 heads cannot wear 1 crown, she said. If both remained, factions would rise, elders would divide, clans would choose sides, blood would follow. She met his eyes. I chose stability. You chose one, Kabiesi said. Yes. And you believe the other is dead? Yes. But before Kabiesi could speak again, the priest stepped forward. No. The witnesses in the shrine turned toward him. The land does not cry for the dead, the priest said calmly. It cries for the living who are misplaced. Adesua shook her head. That is not possible. The priest's voice did not rise. You forced what was not written. Twins where none have ever stood. Destiny demands balance. He held Kabiesi's gaze. The child lives, not as prince, not under this roof, but he lives in another community. Silence settled like dust after storm. Kabiesi stood very still. Now, the fires made sense. Now, the division had a name. Now, the tragedy made sense. The shrine emptied slowly. The elders withdrew in silence. The chief priest remained kneeling before the altar. Kabiesi looked only at the cowrie still lying divided on the mat. Then he turned. Send for the guards. It was still early morning when the orders were given. Trusted messengers were summoned. You will go beyond Oyo, Kabiesi instructed. Ask carefully and quietly. Look for a young man about 22 years of age, one who fell unconscious 3 days ago. The same hour my son collapsed. They bowed and left before the sun had fully risen. The search began without announcement. Days passed. Reports returned. Many villages had young men of that age. Some had been ill, some had been injured. None matched the hour, until one did. A messenger arrived near dusk. There is a village downriver, he said. Akite. A young man there fell without warning at the exact hour the prince collapsed. Kabiesi asked only one question. Is he still alive? Yes, Kabiesi. That was enough. We leave at first light. At dawn, Kabiesi rode with a controlled escort. No drums, no royal announcement. When they reached Akite, the sight of horses alone stirred the village. But Kabiesi did not stop in the open square. I request counsel with your head and elders, he told the first elder who approached. He was led to the village head's compound. Inside, mats were laid. The elders gathered. Only when the gates were closed did Kabiesi speak. This is not a visit of ceremony, he said. It concerns a matter of timing. We are looking for a young man, about 22 years of age, one who fell suddenly 3 days ago. At the same hour a disturbance struck Oyo. The elders exchanged looks. Well, there are many young men in Akite, the village head said carefully. Kabiyesi nodded. I ask only about one who collapsed without cause. Silence stretched. Then an elder leaned forward. There is only one whose fall caused alarm 3 days ago. Ayomide. Kabiyesi held the name. Then he said quietly, "Send for his father." The village head nodded. "We will call Akinwale."